Nelson Mandela was born on July 18, 1918, in the small village of Mavezo in the Eastern Cape Province of South Africa. He was born into the Thembu royal family. His father, Gadla Henry Mamkanaiswa, was a chief and a counselor to the Thembu king. Mandela's mother, Nosekeni Fanny, was the third of Gadla's four wives. Mandela's early life was shaped by his heritage and the customs of the Xhosa people. After his father's death, when Mandela was just 9 years old, he was taken to live with a relative, Chief Jongjintaba Dalindibo, at the Great Place in Makekasweni. This experience exposed him to traditional leadership and the responsibilities that came with it. Mandela attended local primary schools, where he was given the name Nelson by a teacher, as it was customary to give African students English names. He later enrolled at the University of Fort Hare, one of the few institutions of higher learning available to Black South Africans at the time. While at Fort Hare, he became involved in student politics and joined the African National Congress (ANC) Youth League. Mandela's political consciousness began to develop during his time at university. He participated in protests against the university's policies and was eventually expelled for his involvement in a student strike. After leaving Fort Hare, Mandela moved to Johannesburg in 1941, where he worked as a law clerk and continued to engage in political activism. In Johannesburg, he met other influential figures in the anti-apartheid movement, including Walter Sisulu and Oliver Tambo. Mandela and Tambo later opened South Africa's first black law firm, which provided legal assistance to those who could not afford it. Mandela's early life was marked by a blend of traditional upbringing, educational pursuits, and a growing awareness of the systemic injustices faced by Black South Africans, which ultimately propelled him into a prominent role in the struggle against apartheid. Nelson Mandela's activism and political involvement were pivotal in the struggle against apartheid in South Africa. His journey from a young activist to a global symbol of resistance and reconciliation is marked by significant events and milestones. Mandela joined the African National Congress (ANC) in 1944, where he became involved in the ANC Youth League. He advocated for a more radical approach to fighting apartheid, which was characterized by mass mobilization and civil disobedience. In 1944, Mandela played a crucial role in organizing the Defiance Campaign against unjust laws, which included acts of civil disobedience. This campaign aimed to challenge the apartheid regime's discriminatory laws and mobilize Black South Africans to resist oppression. Mandela helped establish the ANC Youth League, which sought to engage younger members of the African population in the struggle for freedom. The League pushed for a more militant approach to activism. Formation of Umkhonto we Sizwe. In response to increasing violence from the apartheid government, Mandela co-founded Umkhonto we Sizwe MK in 1961, the armed wing of the ANC. This marked a shift from nonviolent protest to armed resistance. As a means to combat the oppressive regime, Mandela believed that sabotage would be necessary to fight against the injustices of apartheid. In 1961, Mandela was arrested and later convicted of sabotage during the Rivonia trial in 1964. He and several other leaders were sentenced to life imprisonment. During the trial, Mandela delivered a powerful speech outlining his commitment to the struggle for freedom and equality. Mandela spent 27 years in prison, primarily on Robben Island, where he endured harsh conditions, but continued to inspire fellow prisoners and maintain his commitment to the anti-apartheid cause. During his imprisonment, Mandela became a symbol of resistance against apartheid globally. International campaigns for his release gained momentum, with protests, boycotts, and calls for sanctions against South Africa. His name became synonymous with the struggle for justice and human rights. Mandela was released from prison on February 11, 1990, amid growing domestic and international pressure on the apartheid regime. His release signaled a new era in South African politics. International movement. After Mandela's imprisonment in 1964, awareness of his plight and the broader struggle against apartheid grew significantly. Activists, organizations, and governments around the world began to rally for his release and the end of apartheid. Anti-apartheid movement, various organizations, including the African National Congress (ANC) and other anti-apartheid groups, mobilized support internationally. Campaigns were launched to raise awareness about the injustices of apartheid and to highlight Mandela's imprisonment as a symbol of the struggle for freedom. Cultural and celebrity advocacy. Prominent figures, including musicians, actors, and writers, became vocal advocates for Mandela's release. Artists such as Paul Simon, Stevie Wonder, and the band U2 used their platforms to bring attention to apartheid and call for Mandela's freedom. The song, "Free Nelson Mandela" by the Specials became an anthem for the movement. Economic sanctions and divestment. Many countries and organizations imposed economic sanctions on South Africa in response to its apartheid policies. Universities, churches, and businesses around the world engaged in divestment campaigns, withdrawing investments from South Africa to pressure the government to change its policies. United Nations involvement. The United Nations played a crucial role in condemning apartheid. In 1973, the UN General Assembly declared apartheid a crime against humanity and called for member states to impose sanctions against South Africa. Various resolutions were passed advocating for Mandela's release. Global protests. Throughout the 1980s, massive protests took place worldwide, demanding Mandela's release and an end to apartheid. Events like the International Day of Action on July 12, 1981, saw people across multiple countries marching and organizing rallies. Political changes in South Africa. By the late 1980s, internal resistance to apartheid was growing stronger, with widespread protests and strikes occurring throughout South Africa. The National Party government faced increasing pressure from both domestic activists and international communities. In 1989, F.W. de Klerk became the president of South Africa. He recognized that the status quo was untenable and initiated reforms aimed at dismantling apartheid. This included lifting bans on liberation movements like the ANC. On February 2, 1990, President de Klerk announced that he would be releasing Nelson Mandela from prison. This announcement was met with jubilation both in South Africa and around the world. Nelson Mandela was officially released from Victor Verster Prison on February 11, 1990. His release was a historic moment, symbolizing hope for a new era in South Africa. Mandela walked out of prison with his fist raised in a gesture of solidarity and defiance, greeted by throngs of supporters. After his release, Mandela played a crucial role in negotiations to end apartheid and establish a democratic South Africa. He became a symbol of reconciliation and nation building, emphasizing forgiveness over revenge. Mandela's release not only marked the end of his personal imprisonment, but also signaled a turning point in South African history. His ability to garner international support during his imprisonment helped to sustain the anti-apartheid movement and ultimately led to significant political change in South Africa. The global campaign for Mandela's freedom highlighted the power of solidarity and activism in effecting social change, serving as a model for other movements around the world. Nelson Mandela went on to become South Africa's first black president in 1994, leading efforts to heal a divided nation and promote reconciliation among its people. Nelson Mandela's presidency and his commitment to reconciliation are pivotal chapters in South Africa's history, marking the transition from apartheid to a democratic society. Nelson Mandela's presidency, 1994-1999. Historic election. Nelson Mandela was elected as South Africa's first black president in the country's first multiracial elections, held in April 1994. his election symbolized the end of decades of institutionalized racial segregation and oppression. Mandela's government was characterized by inclusivity. He established a government of national unity, which included members from various political parties, including the African National Congress ANC, the National Party NP, and the Inkatha Freedom Party IF. This approach aimed to foster cooperation and stability in a deeply divided nation. Mandela prioritized socio-economic issues, launching the Reconstruction and aimed at addressing poverty, unemployment, and inequality. The REDP sought to provide basic services, housing, education, and healthcare to previously marginalized communities. Under Mandela's leadership, South Africa adopted a new constitution that enshrined human rights and equality for all citizens. The constitution was celebrated for its progressive nature and included provisions to protect the rights of women, children, and marginalized groups. Mandela worked to re-establish South Africa's position in the global community after years of isolation. Due to apartheid, he emphasized diplomacy, trade, and international cooperation, fostering relationships with various countries and international organizations. One of Mandela's most significant initiatives was the establishment of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission in 1995. Chaired by Archbishop Desmond Tutu, the Turk aimed to uncover the truth about human rights violations that occurred during apartheid, promote healing, and foster national unity. It provided a platform for victims to share their experiences and for perpetrators to confess their crimes in exchange for amnesty under certain conditions. Mandela believed that true reconciliation required forgiveness rather than retribution. He often emphasized the importance of understanding and acknowledging the past to build a united future. His personal example of forgiveness, having been imprisoned for 27 years, set a powerful tone for the nation. Mandela promoted various initiatives aimed at fostering social cohesion among different racial and ethnic groups. He encouraged dialogue between communities and supported programs that celebrated South Africa's diversity. Mandela famously used sports as a unifying force, exemplified by his support for the national rugby team during the 1995 Rugby World Cup. By wearing the Springbok jersey, a symbol of apartheid-era sports, he signaled his commitment to reconciliation and inclusivity, helping to bridge divides between black and white South Africans. Despite his efforts, Mandela faced challenges during his presidency. Economic disparities persisted, and some criticized his administration for not doing enough to address poverty and unemployment quickly enough. Additionally, tensions remained among various political factions, particularly with the IF. Nelson Mandela's presidency is remembered as a transformative period in South Africa's history. His commitment to reconciliation over revenge helped prevent potential civil conflict and laid the groundwork for a peaceful transition to democracy. Mandela's emphasis on unity, forgiveness, and human rights continues to inspire movements for justice and equality worldwide. His legacy is reflected in South Africa's ongoing efforts to address social inequalities and build a more inclusive society. Mandela remains an enduring symbol of resilience, hope, and the power of forgiveness in the face of adversity. Nelson Mandela's later life and legacy are marked by his continued commitment to social justice, human rights, and global peace after his presidency. After serving as president from 1994 to 1999, Mandela stepped down and retired from active politics. He focused on philanthropy and advocacy, establishing the Nelson Mandela Foundation in 1999 to promote his values and support various causes. In his later years, Mandela became a prominent global figure advocating for issues such as HIV or AIDS awareness, education, and poverty alleviation. He used his platform to raise awareness about the HIV or AIDS epidemic in South Africa, which had devastating effects on the country. Mandela continued to speak out against injustice and inequality around the world. He was involved in various international causes, including advocating for peace in conflict zones, supporting the Palestinian cause, and addressing issues of climate change. In his later years, Mandela faced health challenges, including respiratory infections and a battle with prostate cancer. Despite these challenges, he remained an influential figure until his passing. Nelson Mandela passed away on December 5, 2013. At the age of 95, his death was met with an outpouring of grief and tributes from around the world, reflecting his status as a global icon for peace and justice. The legacy of Nelson Mandela, symbol of resistance and reconciliation. Mandela is celebrated as a symbol of resistance against oppression and a champion of reconciliation. His journey from prisoner to president exemplifies the struggle for freedom and dignity, promotion of human rights. Mandela's legacy is deeply intertwined with the promotion of human rights. His emphasis on equality, justice, and dignity for all continues to inspire movements for civil rights and social justice globally. Influence on leadership. Mandela's leadership style, characterized by humility, empathy, and a focus on collective well-being, serves as a model for leaders worldwide. His ability to unite diverse groups and foster dialogue remains a relevant lesson in conflict resolution. Educational initiatives. The Nelson Mandela Foundation focuses on education and youth empowerment, promoting initiatives that reflect Mandela's belief in the transformative power of education. The foundation continues to support programs that address social issues and empower communities. Cultural impact. Mandela's life story has been immortalized in books, films, documentaries, and art. His image is synonymous with the fight against apartheid and the broader struggle for human rights. International recognition. Mandela received numerous awards and honors during his lifetime and posthumously, including the Nobel Peace Prize in 1993, shared with F.W. de Klerk, for their efforts to peacefully end apartheid. Annual observance. July 18, Mandela's birthday, is celebrated as Nelson Mandela International Day. This day encourages individuals to take action to make a difference in their communities and honor Mandela's legacy of service. Nelson Mandela's later life was characterized by his unwavering commitment to social justice, human rights, and global peace. His legacy endures as a powerful reminder of the potential for transformation through forgiveness, dialogue, and resilience in the face of adversity. Mandela's influence continues to resonate across generations, inspiring individuals and movements striving for equality, justice, and reconciliation worldwide.